Welcome back. It's the Motor City Riffs podcast where we deep dive with a band from right here in the Motor City and get to know them. And I think in many ways this episode is going to be a first because not only, we'll get into it, but not only do I believe you guys may be the band that is the youngest as far as like since your inception here, but you're also the first two-piece band who is now a three-piece band, as I discovered when you guys showed up tonight. Tonight we're talking to the guys from Port Huron, known as Tiny Robot Orgy. Josh, John, Derek, welcome to the Motor City Riffs podcast.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to talk to you guys. You sent us some of your stuff a couple of months ago, and funny enough, the first song that I wanted to play, actually, I don't remember which one of you guys I talked to in the email. It was John, yeah. But with the first song I wanted to play, you were like, that's not really exemplary of like what Tiny Robot Orgy is. If you want to play the other one, I was like, all right, no, that's fine. I get it. Absolutely. But we'll get into that. So let's start at the beginning. Your band is called Tiny Robot Orgy. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's a valid question.
Excellent question.
It's one that comes up from time to time.
Often,
sure.
Very often.
Where does the name come from?
Long story short, poorly planned and executed Facebook poll when we first decided that we were gonna do more than a one-off song together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the people spoke, and unfortunately,
well, you know, the follow-up question has to be, what were the other options?
One of them was Falcon Sex Hat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dumpster Phoenix.
Dumpster Phoenix.
I think was.
Wow.
Kaiju Jesus. That was my favorite one.
Yeah.
Those are all solid.
I know, and this is what our friends and family.
Yeah, decided Tiny Robot Orgy was funnier.
Yeah.
What this came from was I have a friend I work with. His name's Jake Streeter.
Okay.
And we have these very unusual conversations from time to time.
Sure, as you do when you're at work.
As one does.
Yeah.
And like every once in a while, somebody will say something, and it's like, that should be a band name.
Yeah.
So I started compiling a list. And I still have it on my phone. There's probably like 40 some names on it. And John and I went through the whole list and we picked out, what was it, five?
Yeah, five or six.
Yeah,
like
five or
that.
six of our favorite ones.
Right.
And then we put up a poll on Facebook and said, which one should we pick? And they picked Tiny Robot Orgy.
I remember reading somewhere that the band REM, when they did the album Monster, had a piece of paper in the rehearsal space, and every time somebody came up with like a song title, they just wrote it down until they had somewhere in the neighborhood of like 200 of them to choose from.
Man,
and
that's idea.
That's what that kind of reminds me of, because like I said, like all those names that didn't get picked are excellent song names if they don't become you know band names for somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's okay. It's a closely held list that I'm not going to share with you.
That's a good idea. So you guys have a name, you Tiny Robot Orgy. There's two of you. There's John and there's Derek.
Right.
How does the primordial ooze settle for Tiny? Like, how do you guys get together and start playing music? And then when do you decide this is a thing?
Well, it goes back quite a ways, actually. It was must have been around 2000 when we first met, because we were both living in Port Huron. And I took a job doing phone surveys.
Okay.
It was real baller stuff.
Sure.
And Derek was one of the bosses there. And eventually it came to light that he played the guitar and I played the drums. And so we like kind of hung out a little bit and we noodled. I mean, a little bit. I was 20 at the time. And he comes from...
You mean you're not 20 now?
Not anymore. No.
You look it. You look great.
In his head he is. In his head he is.
Amazing.
In his head he is.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we didn't really do much. We just kind of messed around. Because especially at that time, like our musical tastes were pretty different.
Sure.
Very different.
I came up in grunge, and then everything that followed that was what my musical background was. He was way more 80s.
Yeah, I grew
I was
up
like,
in
that's
the 80s, and that
interesting.
was when I learned how to play. So it was like Van Halen and all that stuff. And,
Josh and I, we met when I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And we had a high school band that he played bass in and I sang. And so we were doing that, and then he left to join the Army, and I took this job, started hanging out with Derek, and we didn't really do much. Eventually, I moved out to California for a couple of years, and then when I moved back to Michigan, I settled on the west side of the state, but we were in touch the whole time. I played music with a lot of different people, like all across southern Michigan.
Sure.
And it just never really gave me what I was looking for.
It just didn't quite click.
No, in any host of reasons that you can think of, like it just was not good. And it led to, over the course of the couple decades, I like completely sold off all my gear and quit doing stuff a couple times. And then I'd get an itch to go back and slap around the drums.
Sure.
But yeah, the pandemic was what really started everything off, because we put together this little group of, it's mostly people that we go back, a couple decades or so with, but we get together on Discord and we watch movies together.
Yeah.
And we have a game night, this and that.
For sure.
And Derek and I spent some time playing in a bar band a while ago, but that was, it was a bar band and it wasn't much to
just a lot of covers.
Yeah, exactly.
All covers. It was all covers.
But Derek had an idea that he wanted me to throw drums on, a couple months into, everything kind of shutting down and slowing down.
That was 15 feet, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so he sent me this file and I put some drums on it, and then I ended up singing it too. And we did that and it was fun. And then the holidays were coming, and I think it was Derek's idea originally to what if we wrote a Christmas song?
Write some Christmas songs.
I said to him, I want to do a Christmas song. I've never written a Christmas song before, and I wanted to give it a shot.
Right.
He was like, yeah, let's do that. And then we were kicking around ideas. And do you remember which one we did first?
Oh God, I don't.
I'm real interested to know which one of those, because it's the Christmas EP that you guys put out next or last year.
Yeah. Do we know it's Christmas?
Yes.
It was up on the rooftop, wasn't it?
No, that came right after that. I think it was my Christmas song.
I think you're right.
And once we finished that, I was happy with it. And then John got hold of me. He's like, we should do more stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And he goes, I want to do a public domain song. I said, which one? And we went through a bunch of them. And he said, how about Up on the Housetop? And I said, all right, but we're not going to do it traditional. And then I had an idea, and I said, we'll do the beginning traditional, but then we'll bring it in and do like a punk version of it.
Yeah.
So we had his daughter sing at the beginning of it.
Yes, okay.
The song, and made a crappy little video, shooting video at home. But all this was done online because he lives down in Kalamazoo, and I'm up in Port Huron.
Okay.
So, excuse me. So we were just passing tracks back and forth through Dropbox.
Right.
And when we were happy with them, finished with them, I'd mix them and throw them back out there, and it just kept building up and building up.
You'd finish one track and you'd be like, "Well, I've got another part if you want to check this out."
And he'd go, "I got one idea," and he would send me a file of him singing it with his drums, and I would write something to that, and then we ended up with 6 songs.
I do have to admit, this afternoon while I was going through your catalog on the streaming services, I was listening to the Flood demos and outtakes.
Oh God,
I friggin' love Idiot Sounds so much. Just playing the drums and going doo doo bop bop dee da
bop. That's how he sends them to me when he has an idea.
So funny.
I played drums. Well, my first real exposure to percussion was 6th grade band.
Okay.
And I bumbled my way through band as a percussionist until I unceremoniously left school in the 10th grade. And I loved the snare, I loved the bass, I loved, even the cymbals, but you put a xylophone in front of me and I'm just like, What am I supposed to do with this shit?
So what I'm getting is you're a rhythm player more than you're a melody player.
Much, yeah.
You like it's instruments with percussion in them, but if there's tones to deal with, then nah,
Timpani,
that's
get
too
outta
much.
here.
So if you listen to Idiot Sounds, his instrument is his voice.
Yeah.
So
So I feel bad because Josh, you've just kind of been sitting here very quietly because we're talking about the start of the band and you've just joined the band. I'm interested where did you start with Tiny Robot Orgy? Like, did you see him play a show or did you hear some tracks or were you just talking to John about it and he was like, we could use a bass player. Like, where did you start here?
Like most things, yeah. Well, it was we could use a bass player, but so I was with Movie Night, the Movie Night crew, almost from the conception.
Okay.
So about a year after that started, they released the Christmas EP.
Yep.
And then so I was listening to them during that time, and then they did have one show in Port Huron at the Schwank Soundstead.
Yeah, I love that place.
Oh, that place is awesome.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
And a great, like, all the bands that come in and out of there are all a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Like, I've got some friends that are in different bands that have played there and are all part of like kind of that Port Huron scene.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love the Port Huron punk scene that goes on out there.
Yeah, Brendan
really
and
good
Randy over at the Schwank, man, they've done some, because they've been around over a decade at this point, and they've done some really incredible stuff there.
Yeah.
great stuff.
Yeah, so Josh came and saw our 2-man show, which I thought it sounded okay in the room.
It did sound good in the
we
room.
practiced a lot for it. As much as we could with me living 3 hours away from him.
Right.
And we practiced.
But thankfully,
up
like, we're
and-
both from the grunge era, so like thankfully we can look at the technology we have now and be like, oh, it's so much easier. Like, you
Right.
don't have to get everybody in a room to practice. Yeah, you're
Exactly.
missing kind of that chemistry you get when you've got everybody in a room.
Right.
But we also live in a time where, like, as long as I've got the tracks, I can just, as long as I'm tight with the tracks and all of us are tight with the tracks, we'll be good.
That's
Right,
exactly it.
yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, we practiced up. Josh came to support us at the show. Came
Sure.
all the way up from Chicago because that's where he's.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And
So you guys are literally in like 3 different areas of
Yep,
the.
that's correct, yeah.
And our big secret is we're kind of talking real loose at this point with the fellow that used to play guitar. Well, he's played guitar with all of us, and he's down in Florida. So
How is he gonna get here for gigs?
well, he's gonna have to jump a plane, I think. But,
We get some airline
That's on
miles.
him.
Yeah.
but that's all so
Right.
loose right now that it's not even. I don't even know why I brought it up.
That's fun. So let's play one of your songs because that's one of the things we're here to do. Let's start with "Beans in My Biddle," which is the first track off of. Is it "Flood"?
Yeah, the flood.
Is there anything you want to tell the listeners about the song they are about to hear, if possibly this is their first exposure to the Tiny Robot Orgy?
Well, first, I guess I'd like to say thank you for allowing us to expose ourselves to you.
It's
But
only in a family-friendly way.
yeah, exactly. It's a
Sure.
platonic thing. It's what it is. We picked this one to start off the flood because, it's not technical, it's not impressive, but the vibe of it is just so good, and it was one of those things that was just born out of an inside joke, like, oh, well, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm just gonna put some beans in my bindle and take off. And so that wound up being the only lyric of the song, but it's got a really good groove.
It does.
Cool feel
And
to
I
it. I
love
like
it. And the way the drums come in at the beginning, and then the way the whole thing rolls through to the end. It's just it's definitely a top 5 track for me, I think.
Nice. All right, well, let's take a short break. We'll play "Beans in My Bindle." That's how you say it, right?
Yep.
All right, and we'll be back with more with the Tiny Robot Orgy on Motor City Riffs podcast. Welcome back to the Motor City Riffs podcast. Of course, if you would like to be a part of the Motor City Riffs podcast, we encourage you to let us know at mcrwrif.com. There's also where you can send us your tracks if you want to be on the Sunday night broadcast. Every Sunday night at 9 p.m., I get together with Screamin' Scott, and we play a whole bunch of bands from right here in the Motor City. The song you just heard is Beans in My Bindle from Tiny Robot Orgy, and Josh, John, and Derek are joining me here in the studio tonight. How you guys doing so far?
Doing good.
Enjoying yourselves?
So good, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Fun song, fun vibe to your band. And as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, you guys sent me, I think it was that song, and it was Robo Bo.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I immediately attached to Robo Bo because, like, what a guitar riff.
I know.
What
he
a
just
good
smoked it.
Goddamn guitar riff.
Yeah.
But then I went and I checked you guys out on the streaming service and listened to, like, because you had said in the email that you're like, Robo Bo, it's a good, like, almost heavy metal song, but it's not really what Tiny Robot Orgy is about. And so I listened to it. I was like, oh, you're right. Tiny Robot Orgy is a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
There's a
Like
little,
variety.
yeah, there's some blues in there. There's some grunge. There's some punk. There's some pop in, like, you don't know what the next song is going to be.
Right.
Which is really charming to not know if the next song is literally going to be you on the drums going beep 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 dop bop. Like, you
happens.
don't know.
We like to keep people confused. That's,
Yeah.
that's
And
our,
it's a lot of fun. Now, is there a concentrated kind of like, this is what we want the band to be when you guys got together? Or is it literally like, hey, I'm, almost an 80s metal guy, and hey, I'm a 90s grunge guy, so like, let's just play to our strengths and see what happens?
That to
It
me,
was-
I feel like is probably the best way to describe it, because we lean into what we like,
Yeah.
and it just seems to blend together well because we adapt. Like if I have an idea and I send it off to him, he'll send me a drum track to it, and we'll suggest changes to each other to make sure that it fits together really well.
Right.
And once it does that, it works fine for us. Like we're not looking for a particular type of music. It's just whatever happens to hit us when one of us gets an idea.
Right.
Yeah, it was weird starting with a Christmas record too. Like that put us. I feel like we were kind of on our heels, like right from the get.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of sprawls.
Was there ever a moment
and-
where you were like, maybe the Christmas record was a bad idea to start?
Almost
Ooh.
constantly. But
Yeah.
the point was, when we started doing it, it wasn't a plan to be like for this to be an actual band thing. It was just the two of us screwing around.
Yeah,
and,
like I've got
doing
I've
stuff.
got a cool drum part, or I've got a
Yeah.
cool lyric, or I've got a
Yeah.
cool guitar riff. Like, let's make songs out of these so
Yeah,
I
and
can get
once we
them
did that,
out of my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once we did that and we were happy with it, we were like, wonder if anybody will listen to this. And
It's been a resounding
Yeah.
sorta.
it's been a resounding, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's good. Now, as we mentioned in the last thing, you guys have just added Josh to the mix. What does he bring to the band for you guys that made it so appealing to be like, let's go from being this 2-piece to being a full 3-piece?
Well, besides a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, of
There's a
course.
lot of that.
That's
A lot of
important.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were. Well, it was right after we played that show at the Schwank that we were talking about. Especially as we move into like next spring and summer, like trying to get out and actually, play a little bit more, do some shows.
Right.
And then Derek's saying, well, it'd be really good if we could, find another person or two. So we thought about it it was quick.
Yeah.
But because I played with Josh back when we were in high school, and his style and the flair that he puts on things really, the music back then, we thought it was awesome.
Right.
In retrospect, it wasn't great.
Oh, for sure.
His contributions back then, and especially now that it's crazy to think that I can get a wild hair, I can go downstairs and I can record something in 5 minutes that blows away anything I did in my teens or 20s.
Right.
But yeah, being able to really hear what he's doing now, especially with, we put out a Halloween song, Soul Splitter, and that was the first track that Josh played bass on.
Okay.
And Derek's competent, but guitar is his focus,
Right.
as it should be, because
Right.
it's what he excels at. And Josh was able to come in and put his flavor on these ideas. And then the new EP, it's all Josh bass on there, except for the rap song.
You guys didn't even tell me you were done with that. I was expecting a file.
Well, I mean, it was.
I didn't know until it was done either. So
talk about mistakes and overstepping, and like the second Christmas album was. It was a way bigger undertaking than the first one, because the first one just kind of fell into our laps, you know, and then we were like, oh, we should do this every year. And so
I fought hard against that.
I was going to say, you've done it twice.
Yep.
How many years do you think it's going to last before you're like, we can't do it again?
This man,
Two.
Yeah, we are officially done making Christmas records.
I think we should make a album or at least a song for every holiday.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Even the really obscure ones.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Go online and go to that like holiday a day calendar, and just like pick a holiday. There's a holiday for every day. Happy Pretzel Day.
I want dibs on the National Hot Dog Day.
Right, there you go.
Well, you are a national hot dog.
That is true.
So Josh, you're walking into a band that already has some established tracks. Is there a lot of freedom for you to play around with some of those older songs? Have there been songs that you have added something to that has almost changed the dynamic completely of the song?
I'm sure I do. I actually haven't gotten around to that yet because as soon as I accepted the invite, it's just been
okay. So you guys haven't really focused on any of your catalog with the
haven't.
idea of playing it. Is there anything in the catalog you listen to and you're like, oh, I got something for that?
Oh, definitely. Of course, Robo-Bo. That's my favorite favorite song.
I'm telling you, that's
it's catchy.
It's very catchy.
It's good.
Very catchy. So you guys have talked about like kind of how your songwriting goes in that like somebody will write a part and then you can ship it to each other over the internet, which is really kind of cool. Have you guys done any songwriting like in the room together in a rehearsal space?
Beans in my bindle.
Yeah. That one did come out of.
We were in my living room screwing around with like he has this tiny drum set that he built.
Right.
And I had my acoustic guitar and we were screwing around and he started singing the song. You were singing the line to it, and I just started playing along with it, and then he started playing his drums, and we just kind of built it up from there. So by the time he left from rehearsal that day, the song was
song's good, song's done. That's something I wanted to ask too. Like when it comes to recording, like what kind of equipment are you guys using to like lay down tracks, and then send them back and forth?
Well, I've got my laptop with a few different microphones, and I've got my suitcase drum kit, and then I've also got an Alesis electric drum kit that I track some stuff.
That was something I did want to ask you about later, because there are absolutely tracks on there where I'm like, either he's got an electric kit or that's a drum machine.
Yeah.
And neither answer is a bad answer. Let me say that right out the gate. Like I'm not saying it's a drum machine with judgment in my voice.
Right.
But there's definitely there's tracks on there that I was like, that sounds very electronic.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he's just got an electronic kit.
Yep.
Or if it's a matter of like, hey, there's gonna be keyboards and a guitar on here, so like I'm gonna have to let the drum machine take over so I can play this part here.
Oh no, yeah, it's all played, except for the rap songs. But there's only a few of those sprinkled in over it. But yeah, it's just so easy. It's so easy and it's so nice.
It does feel, once again, like this is common ground that we have. I clearly remember having a karaoke machine with a microphone and figuring out that like, if I put a cassette tape in and I take the microphone and I stick it like halfway into the room and play the drums, I kind of get the room sound. And then I just take another cassette and I play that one and then stick the microphone in front of my guitar amp and I can put the guitar track on top of it. And then I do the same thing with the bass. And then I do the same. And like Dave Grohl talked about on their Greatest Hits record in the liner notes about doing it that way with cassette players. And once again, like you're saying, like it feels so easy now.
Yeah.
You can hook up like a USB microphone and a laptop and just go to town and get fairly decent sound quality.
Yeah.
Is everything that you guys have recorded and put out, is it all home recording?
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're 100% DIY.
Yeah. Is there any desire to like take this to a studio?
Eventually, yeah.
At some point, I would definitely like to record some sort of a record at most likely the Schwank Soundstead.
Sure.
It'd be great to work with those fellas. But yeah, historically I don't enjoy studio time.
Really?
It's probably a byproduct of because I never spent studio time with either of these gents.
Sure,
it's always been the wrong people for me.
Right.
And I won't get into names because it's a pretty terrible story. There was a band that I played with in Grand Rapids, and I really liked them. I thought we were clicking, and it was a very electronic heavy metal kind of thing. And there was always a click track that I was playing to, and all the instruments minus the vocals were always piped into my headphones.
Okay.
And so we played and we did some shows and we recorded a demo, went to the studio, and that was the first time that I actually really heard the singer sing.
And you were like, oh no.
I was like, oh my God, I have to quit this band. Like,
oh my God.
away. It was so just off key and uninspired, and like if I want to listen to off key vocals, I can do that myself.
It is fascinating when you do go to a professional recording studio, how many like little things you don't recognize in a practice space or even in a live setting that all of a sudden become a huge problem.
Yes.
And you're like, oh no, I had no idea we were doing that.
This won't do
So
it
we
all.
talked briefly about like your drum gear, and I want to get back into that, but let's kind of go around the room. Let's start with you, Derek. How important is your gear to you as far as your sound, and what type of gear do you use?
Well, the guitars, like everybody likes a nice guitar, but I mean, you don't have to spend $1,000 for a decent guitar.
Right.
The one that I did most of this EP with, I bought for like $250.
I love it.
And it's a great sounding guitar.
What kind of guitar is it?
It is a Harley Benton.
I've never heard of it.
No, they're this cheapo guitar brand out of Germany.
Okay.
And I got it for about $250. And then for the longest time, I was using this digital 16 track that I bought to do all my tracking and everything.
Okay.
But I'd have to transfer files onto a memory card, and then
Right.
the memory card over that. Don't have to do that anymore. Now I have an iPad, and I do almost all of my recording
Into the iPad?
In GarageBand.
Okay. Yeah.
And most of the presets that they have for guitar sounds on there are fantastic.
Yeah.
So I don't have to mess around with any of them. So John will send me a drum track, he'll put it in Dropbox, and then I'll pull it out of Dropbox and I'll drop it in GarageBand.
Yeah, put it in GarageBand.
Do my part over
open
top
up
of it and
open up a
ship
new
it off to
track.
Josh.
find your sound and then
Great.
put it together. Now, when you guys obviously when you play live, you can't use the stuff in
No.
GarageBand for your sound.
No, not so much. No, I have a pile of pedals, but the one that I'm using right now is my favorite one. Is Veilton grunge pedal. It's a multi-pedal. It's got
Which pedal? Oh, who?
Veilton.
Veiled. Oh, I think I know what pedal you're talking about.
Them and I can't remember who the other one is, but it's got distortion, it's got chorus, it's got delay, it's got reverb.
Oh my God, I remember this pedal.
Little job about this long. It's probably about 1.5 feet long.
Yeah.
It's got 4 buttons on it. Love it.
That's awesome.
Nice.
And then what about your amplifier? What kind of amps do you like to use?
I have a few different options. I have a little orange amp that I run into, and I also have just a headrush speaker cabinet that I run directly into.
Okay.
But I also have a Vox, what is it, a VM50? It's a 50-watt Vox head.
Sure.
And they use that new tube technology.
Yep.
Oh, sounds so good.
Nice. Josh, what about you when it comes to your bass? Is the equipment important to you as part of the sound you like to get out of your bass, and what equipment do you like to use?
I don't ever think I've actually had good equipment, so I'm gonna say no.
It's like you're more focused on the player than the actual equipment they're using.
Right, exactly.
It's always fascinating to actually ask this question to musicians because it's the kind of thing like there's the idea that there's like Beatles people and Rolling Stones people, and when I talk to musicians, I think there's people who love the studio and people who love the live setting, but similarly there are musicians who will play a $200 guitar and be like, it's fine. And then there's musicians like, oh no, I've got these pickups in this guitar with this neck and these strings.
Well, don't get me wrong. I have a couple of nice guitars. I've got
sure.
a really nice Wolfgang.
But there are certain musicians where like that is, very important.
No, I totally get that.
But it's also very, like I said, there's the other end, like you're saying, where it's like, as long as it makes a bass sound, I'm pretty happy with it.
Well, if this is at a garage sale for $35, it's making noise. It's good enough.
Yeah, but I got right now I'm using Squire jazz bass.
Okay.
And then
those are good.
Oh yeah, I loved. I picked up about like a year and a half ago, hoping that these guys would ask me to join their band. And and it just kind of.
And it took him a year and a half.
You should have said something.
We brought you in way earlier.
Well, you had a lot of time to pump up your Spotify numbers and learn your songs.
There you go.
Well, you don't ask if you're not invited, guys.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
But and then I got a Behringer bass amp that I got for Christmas, about 2005.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, like Derek, I use GarageBand. I did send when I recorded my first song with them. I didn't have anything. He was just like, "Hey, can you get this recorded in a week?" I was like, "Oh, okay." So
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Yep.
And, used
Audacity.
Yeah. And like a week after I sent it to him, Derek was like, "Dude, that sounded horrible."
So when you guys are using, you're talking about using GarageBand, using Audacity, going through the iPad or something. Are you basically plugging direct into the iPad?
Yeah, I have an iRig. It's a
yeah.
You know what it is.
Yeah, we've got those here at the station as well for stuff.
Yeah, but that's what I run into.
So you don't like try to mic anything or anything like that. You just
Not
run
if I can
directly
avoid
into it.
Because I have a dog who walks around.
That's fair.
And I have tile floors. So, like, if I'm trying to record, all I hear is tick, 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 tick.
That could be some really interesting recording, though.
To a point, yeah.
But
And then he also snores a lot when he falls.
Oh,
asleep,
well,
so
yeah, that's
that
too.
kind of kills.
But it's the same thing with the bass. You're just kind of plugging directly into the.
Well, I don't like using the iPad because it's rage-inducing, so I went and got a MacBook, and then I have like a M Audio breakout box that I plug into.
Yeah, for sure.
And then,
Can I just point out once again that he's the tech guy?
I'm very specialized.
Very specialized.
Literally
Very
very
specialized. When it comes to your bass too, your bass tone, do you go for more of like high end, or do you go for like very fuzzy low end?
Very low end, definitely low end.
Yeah.
When Johnny and I were together in our high school band, my first amp wasn't even like a proper bass amp. It was like a Marshall stack that had, or a Marshall half stack that had some PV bass speakers in it.
Okay.
And then I could only afford the stack, and I got it from like Musical Round. And then the guitar player had an old crate head that I used, so I just like turn it low all the way down. So I just have like PTSD from having to use that. So I just so that's always low.
yeah.
Now you said, John, you said you have an electric kit, but then you also you have a regular kit too, right?
Kind of. Because my last, I guess you'd call it a rage quit when I just decided like, all right, I don't like doing this, and I sold off all my stuff, and I did have a legitimate acoustic set that was in Grand Rapids, and I live in Kalamazoo. When the lockdown, the shutdown, and all that happened, I was thinking like, I'm gonna want to go get my kit,
right?
Because if I'm stuck here in the house, I'm gonna want to play. And then I ended up thinking better on it. I was like, well, I wasn't crazy about that kit anyway, so I sold it to a guy that was hanging on to it. And I picked up an electric kit for the time being. And then when Derek and I started talking about playing out like smaller shows, I was thinking, I'm going to build a suitcase drum kit.
And what does that entail?
Oh man, so much. And it's
Buckle in.
I went
Like
through,
if you don't know what a suitcase drum kit is, how would you define it?
well, it's preferably a vintage Samsonite suitcase, hard side. And what I did was cut a hole, installed a chop down, I think it's an 18-inch. It was a tom drum, but it serves as a bass drum now. Hooped it
Inside the suitcase.
Yeah. It's like the drum goes in just a few inches. And most of the equipment, I got it set up so that most of the equipment packs down into the suitcase, but
Fascinating.
yeah, and I took.
It's one thing for guitars because like they're chords. You can wrap chords and stick them in a case or something like that. But like drums are drums, man.
Right,
You can't like just.
That's a lot of moving.
You can only break drums down so much.
Right. Yeah. It was a lot of very specific hardware hunting and figuring out ways to rig things up and attach stuff. And yeah, I got some really great cymbals. I chopped down. I've got a floor tom that's, it's probably 4 inches deep. And I've got a mounted tom that sits on top of the suitcase. I've got my it's a 10-inch by 5-inch snare that I hooked up so that it attaches to my crash stand, and I've got like a 4-piece kit that I can mostly carry with one hand. So
That's awesome.
well, with the caveat being I need a backpack too, but
Right, but still, like you've broken it down to like the hardest part about being in a band and playing out live is the fact that you gotta haul drums.
Right.
That's one of the things I constantly ask bands when we have them on the show. But I always ask the lead singer, I was like, you help the drummer haul, right? You help the drummer pack, don't you? Because like you don't add nothing. You got to bring a microphone, maybe.
right.
The least you can do is pick the guy who's got the most stuff and be like, what can I do?
Yeah, so when we first started talking about getting together to rehearse and stuff like that, it was like for both of us because, quite frankly, I'm old, Chuck.
I would never have guessed.
This is news
Well,
to
I'm
me.
very immature for my age, so it makes up for it. But like for me, the main priority was as little heavy stuff as possible.
Right.
So, and when I told John that, he was like, "Oh, absolutely, that's the plan." So I got the first amp that I had was a little 10-watt orange amp.
Yeah.
I had that. I had a chord or a couple of chords. I had my pedal and one guitar, and I'd drop it in the back of my. I have a little trailer for my bike, and I'd ride it over to his folks' house, and he'd get there with his little suitcase and come out, and like 10 minutes, we're set up, good to go.
I feel like when you guys like if you guys start playing more live shows in 2023, I feel like it's gonna be amazing. Like when you show up with as small a stage of stuff as possible, like sound guys are gonna be like,
it's gonna be like 8 feet by 8 feet.
I got a mic that? That's a practice amp. What in the world? Well, I want to talk to you guys about what the next year holds for you guys. But before we get to 2023, you guys have released a new Christmas EP, as we talked about earlier, for the second year in a row. It's called Christmas Cards from Crazy People.
Yes.
And you brought me a track off of it that we're going to play for everybody right now that's called Holiday Hookup, right?
Yes.
I put the question to you guys once again. Is there anything you want to tell people about the song they're about to hear?
It was written entirely by mistake.
How does that happen? How do you go, oops, a song?
It's surprisingly easy. I had a specific idea for a song.
Okay.
And I told these guys I was going to start throwing it together, see what I could do. Sat down to work on it. Nothing was coming to me. Next day at work, a riff pops into my head. Lyrics pop into my head. None of them were the ones that I was trying to do.
Right.
So I wrote it all down, didn't think anything about it. Got home that night, and it was still stuck in my head. So I sat down, and I figured out all the chords, wrote out all the lyrics, pretty much recorded all the stuff that I needed to, and sent it off to them. And I'm like,
Merry
do
Christmas.
this.
Yeah. This isn't what we talked about, but it's
I'm
something.
pretty sure that's close to what I said to him. I'm like, no, I said, guys, I wrote a song by mistake.
Well, here you go. It's a song by mistake known as Holiday Hookup from Tiny Robot Orgy. We'll be back with more of the Motor City Riffs podcast right after this. Oh, man, we're having a good time. We're back with the Motor City Riffs podcast. I'm hanging out with the guys from Tiny Robot Orgy. I'm talking to Josh, John, Derek. You guys, I have really been looking forward to having you guys ever since we kind of exchanged information and you guys like, yeah, we'd like to do the podcast. I'm like, I can't wait to talk to these guys.
Oh, yeah.
Mainly because you guys started as a two-piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really interested. I went on your Spotify account and noticed I've never seen another band do this, but you guys have specific playlists to now the three of you to what your influences are. And that's a question I always like to put to the people that we have in for the Motor City Riffs podcast. If I put you on the spot right now and asked you, we'll go around the room starting with you, Derek.
Okay.
What's a band or bands that influence your creative output in Tiny Robot Orgy? Who would you say?
The old 97s.
Okay.
The Ramones.
Ramones, nice.
Van Halen.
Yeah.
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Interesting.
Whatever crosses my, whatever.
Sure.
Whatever runs across. A lot of Bare Naked Ladies and the Foo Fighters.
I did see. I think it was your playlist had a lot of Bare Naked Ladies on it. I thought that they were a band that stuck out to me. I was like, yeah, I could see it. I could see a lot of Van Halen, like the '80s guitar heroes in your guitar playing as well.
Oh, that's what I grew up with,
For sure. What about you, John?
Well, for me and for drums, I would say the biggest influence on my style, even to this day, is probably Inception era until mid-90s Helmet.
Interesting.
John Strainer. I mean, everything he does is
tight
so
drummer,
deliberate and just amazing. It's exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah.
Not really more and never anything less.
It's fascinating because it sounds like he hits the drums so hard. Yeah. But like you're saying, it's deliberate. Like every hi-hat hit, every cymbal crash, every kick drum is there for a reason. And it is not by accident. It's not a stutter step.
Yeah. And then minus the Bear and then Botch were big influences as far as drums go for me too. And I mean, as far as vocals go, I mean, I have issues with my vocals, and
Interesting.
I wouldn't even really know who to cite as an influence, but like it's just worth saying that Mike Patton and everything he's ever done is phenomenal.
Absolutely is.
I
believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that was my first rock and roll cassette.
Really?
Was the real thing, Faith No More.
Oh my God, mine was Ugly Kid Joe, as ugly as they want to be.
Yeah, I remember everything about you. That was a great song.
It blew my mind when I was a kid.
Josh, what about you? What do you when it comes to your influences for what you're bringing into the mix? What would you say is musically?
Oh man, what I would like to sound like, definitely the Coup. I listen to a lot of them.
Okay.
Moscow Death Brigade. They're very, very awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with either of those bands, but just from the name Moscow Death Brigade, like I'll definitely be looking that up. I'm gonna be like, I gotta hear what he's talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah. Just kind of a mix between punk, techno, rap.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's
interesting. If I could, when I first heard you guys, when I was listening to you guys, like I said, going through and discovering that you guys have a very varied genre, that you don't stick in a genre. The Mike Patton makes a ton of sense. Because Faith No More is another band where like you've got the heavy metal guy, but then you've got the keyboard player, and then you've got the bass guy who's playing funk, and the drummer's got his toms way up here, so God knows how he's hitting them.
Right.
And it's fascinating. So yeah, but I think part of it is because you guys were a two-piece and because you were so eclectic. Ween was a band that immediately jumped to mind.
Absolutely love Ween.
And
they're another one. They're all over the place.
So I want to not so much tell you a story, but so when I discovered in the 90s, when I started listening to Ween, there were bands like Ween or like early Beck or the Flaming Lips that I all lumped in together in my 20-year-old mind as a genre that I called shit rock.
Yeah.
And it was because like whether it was the production or whether it was a guy singing that didn't sound like he was good at singing or something like that, like everybody had something that normally you wouldn't hear in like commercial radio music. Like usually if you're a vocalist, it's because you are very trained and very good at it. If you're a guitar player, it's because you know what you're doing. And there was always something about each of those bands that sounded like, are you just making it up on the fly? Do you not know what you're doing?
Right.
But the thing that's impressive about that kind of thing, and I find that in your guys' stuff too, is that when you break music down to that like base level and you decide, I may not have the equipment or the physical capabilities to make the music that I want to be making or that necessarily that people would expect me to be making, the songwriting shines. When you've got good songwriting, but like the production is when you hear a good song, you know a good song. And I think you guys definitely have, from what I've heard, like, you know, you as you guys have mentioned, you guys are recording, you know, directly into like, you know, iPads and Audacity and GarageBand and stuff like that. You're only going to get so good a sound without taking to the studio. But at the same time, you guys, once again, going back to something like Robo Bo, you hear that guitar riff, you're like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
And then even if the vocals are a little questionable, you're like, no, this is good stuff. I like this a lot. So I mean that in the highest compliment. I'm not calling you guys.
We appreciate it.
I'm not saying you guys are shit rock because you're bad.
I'll accept it. I'll accept that
If you
label.
want to lump us in with those guys, it's all right.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not offended.
So what do you guys, we talked briefly about going into the future. You guys got this new Christmas EP that you just put out. 2023 is around the corner. You looking to maybe do some live shows?
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking to get out there. It's going to require a lot of advanced planning.
Right,
us
yeah.
being
With
kinda
the- yeah, with you
scattered,
guys being-
especially for Josh. I mean, it's going to be a pain in the ass for sure.
But we've talked about just with the recording how much the technology makes it easy. It also, if you go and see live bands, as much as like there's a debate right now about using backing tracks, like you can. It's there. The first band we did for Motor City Riffs, they don't have a bass player, and they just the guitar player records all the bass parts into the thing. They play to the click track, and it's right there.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
but the whole point of getting a bass player
Is so you don't have to.
so we wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I begged them to let me play bass, and they were like, "No, we like our click tracks." So.
Just gonna blow
Well,
up
it's because
doll
they
on you.
know it all.
But I'm saying, you know, if
All
you,
in a picture of the bass.
especially with the three of you being separated like that, like. It's the best possible thing to get all three of you in a room to play, but it's
absolutely.
not.
Yeah.
It's not a necessity, which is kind of an interesting time to live in.
It is.
Yeah, yep, and we are looking forward to next year. We're going to be working on an EP, and it's
Of
gonna be
non-holiday songs, I'm assuming.
non-holiday songs. No, this one we're gonna jump in the time machine, and the three of us are each going to kind of at least birth an idea, and it's all going to be based on stuff that we were digging on when we were in high school. And
Interesting.
it's going to be called the high school years.
Yep.
So we're going to have, you know, three butt rock songs from Derek. And then,
I'm 10
I have
years older
fun
than
with
these
them
guys,
though.
so
I have fun playing that. I gotta
yeah.
say.
absolutely.
But yeah, I'm gonna pick three that are probably overblown and aggro, and Josh is gonna pick his funky three.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's gonna be all originals, but inspired by, you know, certain bands, like one at a time.
Or the
And
stuff.
Have you guys learned any covers as Tiny Robot Orgy?
We've done 2 of them. We did 2 of them.
oh well, yeah, and the new Christmas record
Yeah.
we actually have a version of Last Christmas by
The Wham!
by
Last
Wham.
Christmas.
Yeah.
All right.
And I was gonna mention this. John said before that he's really not super happy with his vocals.
Sure.
When we did this, I originally sent him pretty much the finished track, and I'm like, could you throw drums on this? He was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Sent it to him. Like later that afternoon, I got it back, and not only did it have drums, but it also had him singing on it, singing backup vocals on it. I was like, I didn't know you could do that.
Like a sweet little baby angel.
Yeah.
And like, well, you heard Robobo,
Yeah.
and you heard Beans in My Bindle. That's kind of like John's voice. That's his singing voice.
Right.
You know, but then when he sent me last Christmas, he's doing the higher part.
And you're like, where's that? Where's that been?
Exactly.
All this time.
Like, what the hell is this? Where did this come from? And he's like, I felt like I felt like I should do it. And I'm like, this is perfect. He's like, you don't have to use it. Oh, I'm using it.
Oh, that was something when we were talking about influences too that I forgot to mention is that I noticed, I don't remember whose playlist it was, but there was a bunch of Weird Al.
Oh, that would be me.
And I was like, yes.
There's also Frank Zappa and
Frank Zappa, Weird Al, They Might Be Giants.
Oh, yeah,
I'm like, yes,
That's
yes,
nice.
I see it. I see it in this music.
I've seen Al 8 times in concert.
That's amazing. He puts on such a show.
Oh,
such a
great
fun show.
One of my favorite ones was for Alapalooza.
Yeah.
And I took my then wife at the time. We don't mention her name. But I took her.
It was the Weird Al show. That was the straw. And she was like, I can't deal with this.
I feel like it probably was. But anyway, I took her to the show. Slam Circus opened up for him.
Okay.
And love those guys. And then he came out and he was doing Bedrock Anthem.
Yeah.
And when it came to the point where he was supposed to sing the chorus, like we're standing right up at the front of the stage. This is at the Ritz in Roseville.
Yes.
We're standing right up at the stage. He walks up and sticks the mic right in her face. She does not sing. She grabs hold of the mic like a death grip and won't let go of it.
What was she thinking?
And almost pulls him into the. And I'm like, you gotta let go. And he never came near us the rest of the night.
I bet.
Right over on the other side of the stage.
It's like, well, that didn't work. Damn.
But yeah, love him. Absolutely love him. Great guy.
So we're talking a new EP. We're talking maybe some live shows.
Yeah.
Is there any like? Is there a checklist at all of stuff that you're like, man, I'd like to do this. Man, I hope we get to this point that we can do this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, definitely we've got as far as potatoes go, we're incredibly small right now. But obviously, thank you so much for having us.
Oh,
in
100%.
tonight.
Oh,
This
yes,
is
absolutely.
incredible.
Thank you guys for coming on.
Kind of a dream come true to
Excellent.
come and sit here and see this awesome space.
I know, it was great.
But yeah, I mean,
Don't even act like you weren't making fun of my walls earlier.
I wasn't making fun of it. That's cool, man. You got a stand-up wall.
I do, and my comedy is still terrible.
Tight five, you can
My comedy is still awful.
Oh,
I've got the wall of practice in front of it and everything. And it's just not working
trying.
out.
Just keep pushing.
What's
it.
that thing with airline food?
I mean, hey.
what's the deal?
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
What's going on with these drivers?
Yeah, more shows. Definitely gonna think about second full length, I think.
Yeah.
And just kind of trying to tweak and refine our capabilities. And it's been a lot different working on this new EP because now it's the three of us instead of just Derek and I throwing things back and forth.
Right.
But it's been really cool to open it up to another mind. And I think it kind of is rough doing like these themed releases because it's the expiration date.
We're not going to get an Easter EP?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe a 4th of July single?
An Arbor Day song.
Arbor Day, yeah.
About so many trees. And
Yeah, we've been we've been working on these tracks and like there's some good solid jams on the new record, but
Cool.
come the 26th of December, nobody's going to want to hear that shit until next year.
Right.
It kind of really sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just working on more all season tracks for good times and, just cultivating the vibe because it's the further we go, the more settled into the type of weird that we're going for. We're getting there, and having Josh is, it's definitely an important piece of the puzzle.
That's awesome.
it's an extra layer of weird.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Well, before I let you guys go, one more question. It sounds like all three of you have played in multiple bands over the years and have gotten to play with multiple musicians. As you said, you guys kind of feel like you're small potatoes, but if you were to talk to somebody that is wanting to get into a band or is wanting to start a band right now, is there any advice or any experience that maybe you've had in playing with so many musicians that you have?
Chuck,
that you
are
could...
you trying to get a spot in our band?
I am not. No, I am not. No, sir. It's a question because I like to think that there are people listening to this that are like, man, I'd like to start a band, but like, I don't know. I don't know if I should. I don't know what I should do. I don't know what would you tell somebody that's like, man, I think I want to start a band, but I don't know.
First of all, yes, you should. Yes is always the answer for something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a terrible musician, because all of us were at one point. All of us sucked at what we did.
Right. I tell my wife always wants to pick up the guitar after she hears me play. She's like, but you're so good and I'm bad. I'm like, you have to suck before you're good.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Tell her I did suck.
Right.
And
you just didn't get to see me during the years where I was awful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely do it. Get out there, have fun. It doesn't matter if anybody else likes it. If you like it, like who is it? Frank Zappa.
Mm-hmm.
He says, if you dig it, it's bitchin'. If you don't, it's shit. That's it.
Wow.
End of the line. That's all you really need to know.
Well, that would be a great place to end the podcast, but I don't want to stop talking to you guys. Plus, we didn't like these guys.
I'm not saying you had to stop right there.
No, plus we didn't have these guys. Like, if they're part of it too is, like I said, the fact that you guys have played with so many musicians. Is there any advice that you would give to other musicians with the experiences you've had with musicians that like it didn't work out?
Well, yeah, okay. You have to expect that you're going to run into a fair amount of abrasive people for, whatever reason that you don't click with them. And you just got to, keep doing your thing, even if you're doing it by yourself. And, eventually things do line up. And one cool thing, I've been kind of expanding my social circle a little bit since COVID hit and everything got weird. And in talking to, I had a podcast for a little while, and it was chugging along, and then it fizzled.
How dare you?
I know.
How dare you invade the podcast space and just muddy the waters when I'm trying to do a nice thing here? No, I'm joking.
Chuck, I'm going to send you some links, buddy.
It unfortunately kind of fell by the wayside as music picked up.
Right.
Because it's another activity to keep my face out of the fridge.
Yeah.
And, all this, but
I said yeah way too fast, like I was implying.
Yeah, get your face out of the fridge, you pimp.
Not at all what I meant. I'm sorry, continue.
It's okay.
You chubby load.
No, it's not at all what I meant.
Guilty
not at
as
all.
charged.
Oh, I'm in no
I meant yeah, it's dinner time and I'd like to go home, but I'm really enjoying this, so like I want to stick my face in the fridge too.
Hell yeah.
Where were we?
But I was just saying, honestly, a good handful of people that I've been talking to were not people that I really knew well, and I was finding out that there's a decent amount of people who are really active in the Port Huron, the Detroit scenes,
right.
like this kind of stuff. A couple of them have told me like, oh yeah, the first live show I ever saw was you guys, me and Josh and our old high school band.
Wow.
This broken down little shithole church in Port Huron.
That's fun.
Yeah, and like these are people that like, wow, you're really doing like the bass player from Bathroom of the Future. I know they've been on Motor City Riffs a time or two.
For sure.
Yeah, his first show was me and Josh's old band, and like
that's awesome.
It's crazy to think that like, wow, like he saw us and he's like, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
But
like it's almost backhanded when somebody looks and says, if they can do it, I can do it too. But at the same time, it's cool to be somebody's inspiration.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never looked at it in a backhanded way because, honestly, I don't understand why there's people who can't do what I do.
Right.
Because it's really not that hard.
Well, when you're doing it, when you're looking down at the...
No, I mean, like, it's really not that hard.
Hand me a guitar for 10 minutes and then tell me that it's easy.
I could teach you to do it.
Right. What about,
because I'm a lazy guitar player.
What about you, Josh? Any inspirational words of wisdom for burgeoning musicians out there?
Yeah, definitely. Play with people you can get along with. I think that personality would definitely trump talent unless you're of course,
This
shooting
is how
for,
he's telling us that he's quitting the band.
Grammys or something. But, also, I quit the band.
Oh, well, you heard it here first on Motor City Radio.
I hate you guys.
I don't know. I think
we love you, Josh.
I think y'all get along, and honestly, that's something that a lot of the bands that we've had for the podcast have all said is that like you definitely want to be in a band with people that you get along with very well.
Yeah.
That you
Because
can all like.
There's going to be periods where there's a lot of conflict and you
Sure.
want to strangle people, but in the end,
You can't.
Exactly.
Go to
If we disagree, if we disagree on it, we either set aside and move on, or we just work it out because those are your only two options.
Right. Well, thank you guys for coming in.
Well, thanks for having.
I'm looking forward to big things from Tiny Robot Orgy coming
Thanks
up
so much.
next year.
Not too big.
Not too big.
Tiny
It's
robots.
just Tiny
Tiny
Robot Orgy.
things.
Tiny Robot Orgy. I think the first time I had you guys on the show, I used your name for the joke. I was like,
laughed at our name.
The band is Tiny Robot Orgy, and no, that's not what I call it when I bust out my Transformers.
Yeah.
That's right.